Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
Good morning, I'm Rob Woodard. This is Sunday Journal. Today I'm joined by New York Times best-selling author Chip Bishop. He's the author of The Lion and the Journalist, The Unlikely Friendship of Theodore Roosevelt and Joseph Buckland Bishop. Buckland Bishop was the authorized biographer of Roosevelt and was also Chip's great-granduncle. Chip's just published a new book titled Quentin and Flora, which examines the relationship between Teddy Roosevelt's youngest son, Quentin, and his secret fiancée, Flora Payne Whitney. Chip is also a member of the Theodore Roosevelt Association and serves on the executive committee of the New England chapter. Good morning, Chip. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Rob. Great to be with you.
So tell me, let's talk first about your first book, The Lion and the Journalist. Can you give me kind of a nutshell version of that book?
Yeah, it's the story of a really unknown friendship between President Roosevelt and my ancestor. Their friendship began when Roosevelt was New York City police commissioner in the late 19th century and continued for about 25 years. And I learned about it, of course, as a young person growing up around the family dining table. But it really came to the forefront for me when I discovered a cache of about 600 letters that Bishop and Roosevelt had written to each other over a 25-year period. And those letters revealed an amazing and influential friendship that I documented in the book.
And where did you find the letters?
Well, they're actually in the Library of Congress, but I got access to them through Harvard University.
Uh-huh. And what was there something in those letters that stuck out to you, like you wouldn't have expected it?
Well, I always knew that Bishop was close to Roosevelt, but until I read the letters, I never really understood how important Bishop was to Roosevelt. Their friendship was close. It was important. There were times over and over, actually, when Roosevelt would invite Bishop to take the train down from New York to Washington, D.C., to come to the White House to talk over policies and politics. And Roosevelt became very dependent on him during that period.
And what was Bishop's background? What made him so valuable to the president that the president would value his counsel so much? How did that role come
about? I think
about?
That's the key question. Bishop at the time was working in New York as a very influential editor of the New York Evening Post, and his job was to write editorials, opinions for the newspaper. And he began to aggressively support Roosevelt's policies when he was New York City police commissioner, and he was trying to clean up the police department in New York. And that caught Roosevelt's attention. They got together over lunch one day and thus began a political alliance that lasted till Roosevelt's death.
And so you say that this relationship was about 25 years, a quarter century.
It was.
Right.
It was. It extended right through Roosevelt's period as governor of New York, as vice president, as president. And then after Roosevelt's presidency, he asked Bishop to write his authorized biography, which he did. And that was published in 1920 to great reviews.
And so when you say that you came upon the letters or with the cooperation of Harvard University, how did that work?
Well, I actually found them on the Internet with a Google search. I didn't know they existed.
Right.
And up they popped on Google, and I said, there's my hidden cache. This is what I've been looking for. This is my story. So I went to Harvard and got the necessary credentials required to touch and read these letters. And the story unfolded pretty quickly from there. Right.
And so, but was there anything poignant that you discovered in reading the letters? Was there anything that really stuck out?
There were two things that stuck out in my mind. One, Roosevelt would write to Bishop during some of the more difficult periods of his presidency, "I am always wishing I could see you." And that was followed by an invitation to come to the White House, more often than not with Bishop's wife, and President and Mrs. Roosevelt would invite them to dinner, and they would sit around the dining table at the White House talking about the policies and politics of the world. But I think I was especially struck by one letter. As you recall from your history, Roosevelt became president when William McKinley was assassinated in 1901. And Roosevelt was in Buffalo aboard a train heading back to Washington for President McKinley's services when he dictated a letter to Bishop asking him to come immediately to the White House, saying there were many things I need to talk with you about. So I think in the greatest crisis of Roosevelt's presidency, his assuming the job overnight unexpectedly, he called on Bishop for his counsel.
Interesting. Again, the name of the book is The Lion and the Journalist, The Unlikely Friendship of Theodore Roosevelt and Joseph Buckland Bishop. Where can folks find this book if they're interested?
Well, it's available really everywhere at bookstores, independent bookstores on the Cape. You can order it through Barnes & Noble. You can get it online through Amazon, both in print form and in Kindle.
Now, did either of these men spend any time at all on Cape Cod? I'm just asking.
As a matter of fact, they did. The president was a great hunter, and he had come to Mashpee at one point to hunt in the woods of Mashpee when it was very unsettled at that point.
Was this during his presidency or prior to that?
It was prior to his presidency.
Okay.
And then he came back to the Cape in 1907 to dedicate the Pilgrim Monument. And I have a little excerpt of that in the second book, which I can read for you later on.
Sure, that would be terrific. Okay, well, let's move on to the new book then, Quentin and Flora. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, this is another Roosevelt-themed book. It's about the president's youngest son, Quentin, his best-loved son, and Quentin's secret fiancée, who was Flora Payne Whitney. And she was an heiress to the Whitney and Vanderbilt fortunes, and was the great-granddaughter of Cornelius Vanderbilt, the great railroad magnate of the 19th century. And I tell the story of their growing up in separate worlds. Flora in the storied mansions of Fifth Avenue and the Breakers in Newport, where her family hung out in summers. And Quentin growing up in the White House between ages 4 and 12.
And so when you say secret fiancé, why was it a secret?
Well, it was a secret because they kept it secret initially from their parents. Quentin said that their parents inhabited different planets and would never understand. They were only 19 years old. The Vanderbilts and the Whitneys were, of course, from the wealthy aristocracy of New York and Newport. The Roosevelts, while they were well off, did not hang around in that strata of society. They were political people. They were government people. And the belief was that the family simply would not understand.
I'm reminiscent of Romeo and Juliet.
You bet.
Okay. So how did these two meet, and what was the nature of their relationship?
Well, they met in the New York society. Their families did interact at parties and social balls and that sort of thing, and they met as children. But their relationship really got going about 1916 when 18-year-old Flora made her debut in Newport in front of 500 of the richest and most famous people in America and the world in some cases. And right up until 5 days before Flora's debut, she did not have an escort. And she finally sent Quentin a letter. That's how people communicated in those days.
Sure.
They wrote letters to each other. And she invited him to be her escort.
Now, had they known each other prior to this?
They had known each other a little bit, mostly as friends. Quentin was a freshman at Harvard at the time, and they began writing letters after they had met. But it was very platonic and purely social. But it evolved from there.
Right. You're listening to Sunday Journal. Today I'm joined by New York Times bestselling author Chip Bishop. He's the author of The Lion and the Journalist, The Unlikely Friendship of Theodore Roosevelt and Joseph Buckland Bishop. And he's just written a new book. It's called Quentin and Flora, and it discusses the relationship between President Teddy Roosevelt's youngest son, Quentin, and his secret fiancée. So back to the book. So they go to this debutante ball, and then how does it evolve from there?
Well, it goes from there. Again, I drew on letters. Quentin and Flora wrote more than 100 letters to each other during their courtship. And these letters, thankfully, have been preserved, and they are also in the archives at Harvard. And I spent a year and a half going up to Boston to Harvard, taking the bus up once or twice a week and sitting in the Houghton Library reading these fantastic letters. I felt at times like I was sort of intruding on this private relationship, but the letters were kept, and they are part of history, and I drew heavily on them for the story that evolves from there. Probably the most significant part of the story takes place during World War I, and we oftentimes forget that World War I was a horrific period in world history where over 160,000 Americans died. And Quentin became a flyer, an early flyer in World War I, open cockpits, machine guns at the ready, fighting the German forces in Europe. He tried desperately to get Flora to come to Europe to marry him, as he said, before something happened. But that effort was not successful.
And so what happened? Did they eventually get married, or I'm surmising from the title that the marriage never took place?
It never did take place. The war did not end well for Quentin. Flora went on to live a long and notable life. She married twice after Quentin's death and became the driving force behind the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City, one of the world's great American art museums. And she was the force behind that on the board of directors and raising money for that museum, and lived into her late 80s. And the letters from Quentin were lost for many years, and they were discovered in a shoebox under her bed at the time of her death.
Wow.
She had preserved them all these years. But her daughter told me that as she grew older into her 80s, Flora had lost all memory of her relationship with Quentin. But thankfully that story is preserved in the letters.
Right. So would she actually, did the daughter know if her mom would actually read the letters, or they were just there? Or?
No, these were letters that formed a back-and-forth correspondence. These were sort of the incoming letters from Quentin.
Right, but I mean, as Flora grew older, she would go back and read the letters periodically. Did the daughter know that?
Not clear if that happened.
Okay.
She did make the point to say that as she grew older, she lost all memory of that, and there were times when the daughter would speak to her elderly mother about that period, ask her about Quentin, and Flora drew a blank.
Right. And so what did happen to Quentin?
Well, Quentin, as I mentioned, was an air service flyer in World War I, and regretfully he was shot down and lost over France on Bastille Day in 1918. It was a devastating blow to his father. Theodore just absolutely worshipped this kid. He thought he would be his political heir at some point. He was a talented kid, good-looking. He was a writer. He was a poet. He was everything that would make for a successful man. And Theodore felt that he was guilty to a large degree for sending Quentin and his other three sons to war at a time that he himself could not go anymore. He was too old for them. And within 6 months, Theodore Roosevelt was dead, in part of a broken heart over the loss of Quentin.
And Quentin was about 19, you say? When
he was just 19 years old, right?
Wow.
Right.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you'd like to read a passage from the Lion and the Journalist. Should we get to that?
Well, I've actually chosen one from Quentin and Flora, because this is the period where both Quentin and Theodore Roosevelt come to Cape Cod, and it's a short passage.
Oh, excellent.
Quentin enjoyed most of the perks of being a presidential child, including the opportunity to travel with his father's entourage from time to time and to experience the attendant pomp and circumstance. Quote, almost with the dawn of the morning sun, Provincetown was astir and out to watch for the presidential yacht Mayflower, with the president on board, a town newspaper reported August 20th, 1907. And there she was. It was just 9 o'clock when a little tinge of black smoke far off on the horizon proclaimed her coming. It was a glorious sight, said the newspaper. Quentin surely watched in awe from the deck of the Mayflower as it passed through a ceremonial lane in Provincetown Harbor, flanked by no less than 8 battleships decked out with colorful flags raised in tribute to the commander-in-chief. As a 21-gun salute boomed, the President, First Lady, daughter Ethel, and Quentin walked the pier and boarded open carriages for the ride through town. They drove past 1,500 Marines standing at attention to the top of Town Hill, where TR would preside at the groundbreaking for a tower marking the Pilgrims' first landing in America. There were cheers aplenty for the popular president and more than a few shout-outs for Quentin. At 9, going on 10, he had achieved a celebrity status of his own, even on the remote outer tip of Cape Cod.
Very nice. It sounds like a fascinating book. I look forward to reading it. And again, folks can find it on Amazon and at bookstores and...
Yes, both in print form and in Kindle form.
All right. Well, great. Thanks so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time, Chip. Thank you very much for joining me today. Today, I was joined by New York Times bestselling author Chip Bishop. He's the author of The Lion and the Journalist, The Unlikely Friendship of Theodore Roosevelt and Joseph Buckland Bishop. Buckland Bishop was the authorized biographer of Roosevelt and was also Chip's great-granduncle. He's just published a new book titled Quentin and Flora, which examines the relationship between Teddy Roosevelt's youngest son, Quentin, and his secret fiancée, Flora Payne Whitney. Chip is also a member of the Theodore Roosevelt Association and serves on the executive committee of the New England chapter. I'm Rob Woodard. You're listening to Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.